Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is MixStream, episode 52. It's been a while. Yeah, I've been saying that for a while. Okay, I haven't been doing much YouTube lately. Once in a while I may put up some special videos here and then. But I've been taking a little break from YouTube since January this year. So it's like about half year right now. I'm still busy. I'm still actively behind the scenes doing lots of stuff. You know, a lot of work has caught up in the studio. It's a good problem to have, I know, right? Okay. Do appreciate all of you subscribers. One of the highlights, of course, is that we've actually hit the 2,000 mark. And what I'm going to plan to do is I'm going to probably plan to do a special kind of giveaway, maybe a mixing giveaway, right? And I'll announce that right over on all my other social media channels. Of course, I'll also, announce it over here on YouTube as well. But you can also follow me over on Twitter or on Instagram and or the studio profile, the studio Facebook page as well, the Studio 2105 Facebook page. So now with that out of the way, okay, cool. Tonight's featured artist, I want to talk a little bit, right, about tonight's band. This band, right, they first hit me up like a couple of months ago, and I heard their first single, and man, they were really really cool. I thought they really sounded super awesome because they were delivering a style, this kind of like really sort of the 80s 90s kind of a hard rock, melodic hard rock, slash glam rock kind of a music that they were bringing. And I was particularly drawn to, right, the vocalist, right, his name is Alif, by the way, right, and his vocals, which were really really strong, really really powerful, really really clean, awesome vocals. It's hard to find this kind of singers nowadays. Well, maybe here in Malaysia, but maybe in the rest of the world, it's a different story lah. But anyway, I was really really impressed by their music. So they hit me up, and then we got talking, and then they wanted me to mix their second single, which is this. The title of this second single is, right, Battle Cry, right, by King Vanta Black, right? That's the name of the band. And so, here we are today. Let's kick things off. Some other things, if you're new to this channel, right, if you're watching this, or whether live right now or in a replay later, right, you're not yet subscribed, but please do subscribe, right? Click on the notification as well so that you'll be updated, right? I've got lots of videos on my channel already, so please do hit back, right, and check out all the other stuff and all the previous episodes of MixStream, the podcast, the Mix Chat podcast as well, which incidentally, by the way, right, I've also started putting it up on Spotify, so there's more options. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and all the other major podcast platforms as well. So there's many more options to check out those podcasts as well. So let's check out, right? Maybe before, one thing I also want to mention: if you want to support tonight's featured artist, right? All right. What you can do is to sign up as a Patreon subscriber. And how do you do that? It's in the description below. It's also in the text that's floating up there, right? Patreon.com/studio2105. And if you message me, right, and with the code MixStream52, I'll know that if you sign up, right, as a Patreon's member, 50% of your subscription fee is going to go towards the featured artist. Okay, so it's just another way of supporting, right, your favorite artist here, right, supporting your independent artists lah. One of the ways, right, for them to get a little bit more income. So do that. Check it out. Patreon page, description, right? All the social media of King Vanta Black are also down in the description. So please check them out as well. So let's get started right away, right? Without any further delays. So first things first, as usual, what I will want to do is always, when you get tracks for mixing, right, obviously, as you can see, I've already prepped all the sessions together, is to, right, pull together a rough mix, right? This is something that's described as the discovery and framing process. Discovery meaning that you discover, right, the parts, right? You discover how the parts interlock with each other, the whole structure and section of the song, how the sort of the dynamics work, not just between the different instrumental parts, but also the different sections, right? Because dynamics is not just something that that is just whether it's louder or soft, but it also has to do, right? Dynamics also works across time. So first thing we do, I've already pulled out this rough mix, And as we go along, I'm not going to play the entire song, okay? Because I reckon that actually takes up quite a bit of time. So maybe we'll just go over the intro, first verse up to the first chorus, and then we'll get down into the mix proper. So let's check out. I'll give you a little commentary over. So here we go. Check it out. Right. Okay. The full band kicks in right away with the this riff. And when the intro comes, synths and strings as well. That's the concept that they're going for, you know? It's kind of progressive, hard rock, metal. So, this is the second riff. It does this little chromatic thing with the chord progression. And the strings, right, kind of punctuate the riff. Okay, and then we hit into the first verse. And you check out the vocals. Right, everything you hear there is just fader balance and levels. BB is coming on the second verse. Everything picks up. The guitar riff also gets a little more intense. Pre-chorus. Chorus. Which is actually the intro riff. Back, BB's there as well. And then it goes back to the intro again, interlude. Alright, and then it goes back to the interlude again. So there's some interesting things about the arrangement, which, you know, there's a lot of things which I can really point out. Part of mixing, honestly, and I want to preface this whole entire live stream with this statement. Mixing, really, honestly, 60 to 70% of how good the end result of the mix, right, what the end result is, boils down to, I would say, three things. Number one, okay, it is the choice of sounds, right? This means what are the drum sounds that you're using? How is the drum sound captured, right? Your bass tone, your particular guitar tone, choice of sound, the choice of your synth sound, or the patches that you use, right? That has got way much more influence on the outcome of the mix rather than any mix trick or tip or technique, okay? So that's number one, your choice of sounds. Number two, arrangement. And, you know, this song has got, you know, a lot of things that I could also talk about arrangement. Here, for example, right, when I played you the rough mix, that first chorus is actually only half the length, right? I mean, I would say maybe that's one full chorus. And this was intentionally done because the way that the guys, right, the band has arranged it, immediately after that, it goes to the second verse, then the pre-chorus again. But then this time, only in the second chorus do you have the actual full length. This helps propel the song forward. So, you know, it's a good arrangement tool. It's one of the tricks that you can do, right? Maybe that first chorus, you can keep it short so that, you know, that sense of anticipation is there. The listener gets really excited. You get into the chorus, and then, right, it's like, oh, it ends there, and then it propels forward. So it makes the listener kind of want to keep listening to get to the second chorus. It's just a tool. And a lot of things. And thirdly, of course, right, the delivery, the performance, that goes without saying lah, okay? Right, so let's check out, hey, concurrent viewers, we got a bunch of people who are already watching this. If you are watching this, please do say hi in the chat, okay? Don't be shy, let me know where you are from. I'm not sure whether, right, Amy and Alif, right, the members of the band are here in the chat. Hey, guys, if you are there, please say hi down there, right? There's a chat segment down there. If you want to share everything about the band, please do so. So, let's get down to it. And first and foremost, of course, the first thing we're going to do is look at the drums, okay? And Even before that, regular viewers, right, and people who follow me will already know what I am going to do first of all. I am going to, right, set my initial levels. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Setting initial levels, I did a video on that topic, so do check it out. Okay, it is on the YouTube channel about setting your initial mix levels, how important it is to calibrate your monitor and your listening levels here, so that in my case, where I'm listening, it is 85 dB SPL. So the way that I would do it is by setting the kick drum level. All right, there's a video on the YouTube, right, on my YouTube channel that describes it in detail. Okay, so let's take a look. Right, let me pull up. What you want to pay attention to is on the master. So what I'm aiming for is aiming for the kick drum to peak at about minus 12 dBFS. Okay, again, this is the level. The 12 dBFS, this minus 12 dBFS value is not a rule. This is something that works based on my monitors in my room, based on how loud and the way that I've calibrated, right, everything in here, right. So calibration is really, really important. So let's check it out, right? I've set the kick drum to this level, so let's maybe play this section. Kick drum, and let's minus this off, and you can pay attention. Look at kick drum, speaking at about minus 12.3, right? Doesn't have to be exactly minus 12 lah, right? But 12.3, okay? So there we have it. So that is the level that I'm going to set my kick drum at, which is here at about minus 4.5 dB lah. This is the fader setting, okay? So once I've set that kick level, I'm going to be balancing, right, the rest of the track. So this is how I set, my initial mix levels, and to get, good headroom, right, good signal noise to noise ratio. Set the kick drum level, and then everything else in the track is going to be balanced according to that. And looking at the chat, hey, the band itself, King Vanta Black, right, with the heart emojis, right? Love you guys as well, man. So yeah, they are in the chat. So if you want to hit them up, if you want to, ask them any questions, hey guys, if you want to share your stuff, you want to just, send them links to your first single, whatever lah, anything. The whole chat room is yours. Okay, you feel free to just type whatever you want. Right. So let's get down. Now, first thing that you will notice is that the what I have on the kick drum channel, and in fact, it's already set up on every channel that I've done. Again, all this prep work is done in advance. Is I have a bunch of plugins here, right? And what I'm gonna do is just quickly show you what I have. This is basically, all right, tape, right, tape machine, and also console emulation. So I achieved that, right? And some people do it, some people don't, right? It's a different thing. It's a taste. But I find it really, really cool, and especially in this style of music, right? Especially when it comes to rock stuff, right? This really sort of gives you that kind of analog flavor and analog glue of a lot of those favorite records that we really, really love. So it starts off with, right, Virtual Tape Machine, right, by Slate Digital. So this is the very, very first plugin that's in instance. So this emulates as if that the track, the audio was recorded on tape, okay? In this case, it's a 2-inch 16-track analog tape. Follow that, right, by Virtual Mix Rack, and it's got two plugins in here. First one, this is Virtual Channel. So Virtual Channel is emulating, right, the signal path of a large format analog console. Right, in this one, I've set it to a Brit 4KG, which is actually the SSL 4000G. And after that, it goes into the FG73. So this is an emulation of the Neve 1073 preamp. So to recap, all right, what these whole set of plugins are doing, right, and they're the first things on every channel. It is as if we're recording, right, this song as if this song was recorded on tape, then goes into a channel of an analog console of an SSL 4000G, but with a preamp, the Neve 1073 preamp. So it's that combination there. So instantly when you put it, it's hard to describe. It just instantly makes it sound good. Okay, right. tape, has a character and quality of its own. It applies a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression already to the signal, and it's just something that's really, really desirable, right, for the kick drum. So let's go. First thing you will notice, I will have a little high pass filter at 20 hertz. All right, I just do this out of habit. Okay, let's take a look at the kick drum. Okay, and let's just solo the kick. So shout out, by the way, right? This kick drum, these drums were programmed by Busy Ibrahim, right? Busy has worked for me before here at the studio, and time to time he's sessioned for many bands and produced for many bands as well. So these drums, right, technically were programmed by Busy Ibrahim. So shout out. Anything that comes from Busy, I know it's gonna be of high quality and it's exceptional, right? So it sounds great, really easy to work with. Again, my point about choice of sounds being so critical towards the quality of the mix. Okay, all right. So let's play it out. All right. Okay. Again, the I can hear that the tape compression is adding a little bit of saturation to it. It's a really desirable sound. It's automatically already making it fat. Okay. But what I want to do is maybe just EQ it a little bit, and what I will do is I'll drop in this EQ. Really, I love the FGA, okay, which is this is actually their version of the API 550, right, with a little bit of extra bells and whistles, lah. Okay, so I want to actually maybe cover a little bit of that 300 hertz region, but the API 550 does not have a 300 hertz, so I've got to set this at about 200 hertz. Okay, bring it down. There's like a little bit of dust or something like this on the cover. Sorry, let me get rid of it. Okay, so about 4 dB, and the second band here at about 400 hertz, also about 4 dB. So the net cut that I'm getting, it's at 200 hertz and 400. So both of them sort of will carve out that 300. You get it carved out at about 300. Okay, so let's check it out. Bypass. Yeah, so you get rid of that poke, that chesty thing, so it carves out a little bit of that space. Okay, I feel that maybe it needs a tad bit of a shelf boost at about 50. There you go, just to add a little bit more weight to it. Okay, so this kick drum has got a fairly good sustain to it, so I'm wondering whether I will want to reduce the sustain or not. Okay, but again, it depends on the overall track. I'll probably try to keep it to reduce the sustain for now, but we'll see how. Okay, because the more modern-ish metal sounds will tend to have a much more shorter sustain, but if you want to go with a little bit more sort of like the more vintagey vibe, you talk about like maybe 70s or 80s drums. The kick drum does have a little bit of, tail to it. So this is what we've got, which is great. It's a good starting point source. So I'll see whether we will play around with it. I'll probably cut it short, right? We'll do that in a bit. So next thing I would want to drop in is the FG Dynamics. Just apply a little bit of compression to this kick drum. Okay, and this is like the dynamic section of the SSL 4000. So default settings just seem to already work great. So, but what I want to do is I'll go with the hard knee first of all, and let's just play with the threshold. And I don't want much. I just want, right, just a little bit at about maybe 3K or so, at about 3 dB gain reduction. But you bypass that. Maybe a little bit more. There you go. So it's a little bit more spikier, a little more punchier right now. Right? You can probably just bump it up. Okay, that sounds like it's a little bit too much. Let's just change over to the soft knee for a while. Okay, yeah. Soft knee is a little too, it's not grabbing onto it fast enough, right? So I wanted to grab, right? I want that, let's have it on the hard knee, right? And so that we are getting the right amount of compression. Let's not go with fast, because fast is usually a bit too fast. It's probably more useful for something like like maybe a vocal or bass guitar, something like that. Fast here is way too fast for kick drums, okay? I've noticed. Now, one thing that's very important to do whenever you're doing any sort of right processing is to always compare it in context. Always have an equal volume comparison. So that's why you have things like your makeup gain out here, right? So I'm going to actually reduce this so that whenever I bypass the compressor, right, the dynamic section, I'm listening to it at equal volume, and then only you'll be able to evaluate whether something, right, whether the processing that you apply, whether is it EQ or compression, is making it better or not. Otherwise you're just fooling yourself, right? Because when something sounds louder, right, it automatically our brain registers it as being better. Okay, so let's go to kick drum again. Okay, let's bypass. Actually, I think I need to boost it. Let's say boost it about 1 dB. Bypass. Nice. 1.5 dB. A lot tighter, right? I still have that low end, but you know, it doesn't bloom that much, and it kind of helps me to get to where I want to go without applying the gate and the envelope filter, which I was going to do later on. So I think this helps already, just having this already set at this. So that's pretty much it. I don't do a lot. I'm not a fan of that much compression, right, on individual drum tracks, unless it's really necessary. And again, this boils down to the fact that source sounds really good. Okay, so kudos, right, to BZ. Okay, so one thing that I will do is but on kick and snare and some of the drum stuff is I will though apply a little bit of clipping, right? And this is just to catch the very loudest peaks. I find that a little bit of clipping here really helps. So later down the line, it does not force the compressor. You'll see later I'll have a drum bus compressor and also a master bus compressor as well. So it won't force it to work so hard. So this is not there all the time. It's just to catch the tiniest bit of those loud peaks, okay? That's what it's going to do. So if anything that is softer than that, it just leaves it alone. That's all it does. It's very subtle, okay? I'm not trying to drive this to distort or saturate in any way. So here we go. There we go. That's your kick drum. So let's move on to the next thing. And what I love to do is, instead of going on to snare, I would want to put in overheads first. Okay, so let's blend in the overheads. At about -8 dB. Okay, I'm a fan of mixing drums from the top-down approach. That means I like to build the sound around the overheads, then only fill it in with the close mics, such as the snare and the hi-hats, etc. I like to build it in that way. So let's check out, right, overheads. Let's solo this first. So, good. Right, so just take out a little bit of boxiness. It's also happening around 300. 300 hertz is kind of like a good region, right, for drums where you can safely, chop out 300 hertz. Okay, then it's got a little bit, the hi-hat might be giving a little bit of at about 450. And that's good. Now, let me activate this. On overheads, I actually dropped this here. This is actually the AOSys E2 de-esser. So I like actually using de-essers on overheads or anything that sometimes that can has a possibility or the tendency to becoming harsh, and cymbals are one of these things. Okay, so de-essers are great tools, fantastic tools, not just for de-essing vocals but also on other stuff. You can use it to basically target anything that has got harsh frequencies. So what this does, this little setting here, is just going to be very subtle. Right, let's just check it out. Okay, let's bring the sensitivity. So you see, every time like the crashes hit, right? And you are not getting more than 2 dB of gain reduction, right? 2 dB of gain reduction and very, very gentle, right? So just that every time the cymbal hits, it just kind of tucks it down just a little bit, smoothens out the top end a little, okay? Right. And hey, we've got this is someone familiar, right? Let's see. Hi, Kate Shahib. Kate or Kate, right? Is this Kate the singer that I know? So I'm not sure. I can't really see from here what exactly it is. But thanks for joining the stream, okay? All right, here we go. All right, so EOSys E2 DSR. Okay, now let's bring in the snare drum. So let's bring in first of all the snare itself, snare top. Nice fat snare. Okay, so let me first of all take away that reverb because I actually have already set a reverb to it. And let's just solo the snare, okay? Okay, so I like it. It's nice. It's fat. It's got all the low end. It's got the right amount of bottom. But I feel like it needs a little bit of excitement to it. So maybe let's do it by bringing in the FGS, right, which is the SSL. So let's bump up. Oh, there you go. That is beautiful. Okay, so maybe about, I feel maybe about 8 dB, right? But let's listen in context, okay? Nice. So it's now got that bite. Yeah, this without, kind of meh, So now with, yeah, it's got that bite and attack to it. It probably needs a little bit of 3K. There we go. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, I think 10 dB. 10 dBs, right, of boost, So don't be afraid of boosting whenever it's necessary, okay? Okay, let's bring in the snare bottom. Okay, now. So the snare bottom, let's EQ it. Okay, snare bottom actually, it depends, it's primarily, of course, usually the main reason why the snare bottom is just to capture the rattle of the snare. But in certain cases, the snare bottom, because the rattle of snare is pretty much a lot of high end as well, you can even think of it as a sort of EQ. You want your snare to sound brighter, bring up your snare bottom, okay? Okay, but there's a bit of that low mid. Is about 350, and a bit of the nasal at 1K. Yeah, that's about 1K. That's about 1.1K, right? If you want to be anal about it. There we go. Sounds just about right. Okay, so the snare drum tracks, right, the snare top and snare bottom are being routed to this group, this little group bus. And on this group bus, let's solo both of them. Okay, I feel that probably now I could just want to take the edge off a little bit. So same thing, right? Baby, Boss Digital Labs, little clipper, just to take off a little bit of the edge, right? Just a little bit of that spikiness. Bring it down a little bit more. There we go. Good. Yeah. So it just takes off a little bit of that harsh edge, that harsh spiky edge there, okay? Okay, so there is another thing which I would like to play around and that is Plugin Alliance's distortion, the black box analog design. Okay, so this is a very cool. It's actually a saturation box. Okay, so let's turn it in. Let's go for. Let's just solo this bypass. Okay, it is making it a little brighter, but that's not really what I want to go for. Okay, so let's go for. That's nice. When you bring the output down, again, right, we need to balance, right, and have an equal volume comparison. Bypass. Turn it down a little bit more. 37%. Let's bring up the pentone. Because that makes it a little louder. Let's go with try. You bring this down. You know, it's squeezing out a little bit more of the harmonics. Let's bring it up to about 30%, I think. Very nice. Okay, let's listen in context. Very sweet. Alright, so let's take a look at the reverb. Okay, so the one reverbs that I've gotten just recently, it's new. This is actually Sound Toys, a super plate. They just put this out not too while ago, a couple of weeks ago, I think, or about a month ago. So super plate, right? This is actually the souped up version of their little plate, right? So what we're gonna go for is actually like a drum gated reverb style. So let's check it out on the snare, right? Because again, this is right super indicative of the style during that era lah. Nice. Right. Okay, but what I want to do is maybe just EQ the reverb a little. Right. So yeah, a little bit of harshness at about 2.4K. And a bit of that boxiness, woofiness at about 440. Okay, so let's take that out. Nice. Sweet. Okay, that's really cool. So there we go, kick, snare. Let's move on to hi-hats. Hi-hats are usually very straightforward. Okay. Take out the bottom end. A little bit of that resonance at about 1.4K. That note there. There we go. All right. So now the next thing I want to drop in is actually the room mic. And that really makes a big difference. Okay. So the room track is here. And hang on a second. Okay. And the room track is here. Here we go. So let's just solo the room track by its own. So this is just the mono room track actually. And it does sound like it's going through a little bit, or is it because of the tape? No, it's definitely not, right? It definitely sounds as if it's run through some sort of processing, some sort of compression on it already. So I wouldn't know, right? I have to check with Busy. But it's got that cool kind of a distorted sound to it, you know? And it does seem like it's gone through a little bit of compression. So let's just look at it. Alright, so I would probably take out a lot of the bottom end of the super bottom, and you don't need all that top. A little bit of boominess at about 200. There you go. Takes out a little bit of all those rough edges over there. Okay, so that amount of size just they're having a room mic. Okay, let's mute it. Compare. Probably I don't mind bringing back a little bit of that bottom end. It's just yeah, because the kick drum is already tightened up. I don't mind actually letting letting a little bit of the bottom end bloom of the room mic sort of fill in that space, because that helps to give it, you know, that little bit of the size, the back and forth 3D depth of the drums lah. Room mics are really really important, and if you can afford right the space, right, if you're recording drums, anyone who's recording drums at home, right, or in the studio, if you can afford the space or if you can afford the additional tracks to drop in additional, right, a room mic or room track, please do so, right. That will bring, that's super right, that it's a huge important element to, right, your drum sound. So let's move on to maybe the toms. Okay, we're almost done with the drums already. So let's look for a section where we've got a bunch of toms, maybe like here. Very cool. So maybe let's take a look at this. So now, one thing I will always want to emphasize is that even though you may have recorded, right, or even though you're using program drums, it's always worth to take a little bit extra effort to check for polarity, to check for phase, okay? Right, so even though this is program drums, it's worth checking. So what I would do is I would solo the toms with the overheads and make a comparison, okay? Once again, right, the tape console emulation is already there. So let's put this in loop and let's listen and compare, okay? Okay, now let's invert polarity. Alright, okay. So the original just wins out a little bit. So this, which means this is good. So it doesn't take you more than 10 seconds to do. So just go and check it, right? Just make it a habit. In fact, you know, I've already done checking on a lot of the snare tracks and everything. If you want to be really disciplined about it, check everything with the overheads. But you know, for the sake of the live stream, we're just going to check with the toms only. So let's go right with the first tom. Now we solo just the toms. Okay. Okay. Sounds like there's a little bit of saturation there. Wonder where that's coming from. Let me just bypass it. It sounds like it's already a little bit saturated. Yeah, which is interesting. Okay, which is interesting. It gives it a little bit of, I don't mind it. You know, it does give it a little bit of that hairy edge, so to speak, right? Which I don't mind. Although I would prefer it to be a little cleaner because it sounds like the transient kind of got shaved off a little bit. Again, I don't know. It could be again the VST, you know, might have been done. Might have come in that way. So I won't be able to know. But if I were recording it here, if this were live drums, the transient on that toms would definitely be a little bit more pronounced. You know, a little more bite, a little bit more attack. This seems to be lack a little bit of attack as well. So I'm not sure whether it's because of the particular sample or what's it running through. And all right, yeah. And speak of the devil, Busy. Hello, Busy is dropping in on the chat as well. Busy says, "Hi JD, I'm currently listening to this while driving to the rehearsal studio." Awesome, man. Drive safely, okay? It was a blast working with KVB. They know their rock, and it's fun to be able to channel my inner 80s rock star. Ha ha ha. Shout out, man. Thanks for dropping in this live stream. All right. Started doing this in 2020, you know. And the joke was always that, you know, I don't do this live stream until we get until like 10,000 concurrent views. But hey, 10,000, 10, 100, or 1 whatsoever, okay? A lot of people actually watch this during replays over right the following weeks or months as well. So it's an educational thing. So let's go back again. Let's EQ this. So we're going to take out a little bit of. Let's listen to it. It's an interesting. There is actually a notch at 350, right? But the EQ, right? Well, but I'm still hearing that for some reason. So okay, that's cool. That's good. I think it feels that it definitely needs a little bit more bite. So let me try and use, let's say, the envelope shaper, which is right. It's a stock Cubase module inside the channel strip. Just to give it a bit more. There you go. Yeah, that gives it a little bit more bite, a little bit more punch to it. Okay, and a bit of top end somewhere. Yeah, that sounds a lot better, right? So you hear the stick attack a little bit more definition on the stick attack, right? There we go. Okay, so let's go now to the second tom, right? Which is like the mid tom. So let's check it out. Same thing. Let's make it an effort to check polarity. Okay, invert polarity. Somehow with the polarity invert, it has a shade, a touch more low end to it. Again, it could be my ears playing tricks with me, but let's just listen to it. Okay, cool. So let's take out most of the bottom end here. Okay. So there is a bunch of 210. That cleans it up a little bit. There's a bit of honkiness at about 560. And again, I think it could be the patch, I think. So, you know, it does seem to lack a little bit of brightness on the toms compared to like how I would actually mic it. But, you know, it's not a bad tone. It's just like if I know if I was recording this, the toms would be a lot more, you know, a little bit more snap to it. Okay, right. Same thing. Let's add a little bit of the envelope shaper. So I mean, the third-party plugin that's really the most famous one is the Transient Designer, lah, right, by SPL. That's like the classic hardware, which is also available in as a plugin as well. But I think most DAWs nowadays have something similar in their stock plugins or their stock modules. So, you know, if it's there, the tools are there. So, you know, if you don't have like say a plugin suite or you can't afford a plugin, you know, a third party plugin, a bundle or something, hey, don't worry, okay, right? I'm sure there's very often with a lot of the DAWs, you already have some sort of equivalent in the stock form. So, see, I'm using the stock, right? Let's bring this up. Nice. Again, I just want to get that stick attack out, you see? So, right? Okay. Nice. Okay, so let's go now to the third tom, which is like the low tom. Same thing. Rinse and repeat, same procedure. Okay, let's check polarity. Oh, I forgot to loop. Okay, put in loop. Yes, somehow when the lower toms, when I invert the polarity, they seem to have a touch more low end. So this goes to show it's worth checking. It's worth checking polarity. You know, many times when someone says that, oh, you know, I'm my drum sound thin, or my guitar sound thin, or something sounds thin. Okay, first culprit, most often the first culprit is just polarity. It's just checking the phase. Just just click on that polarity invert button, right? Or if you need a plugin, right, to do so, right? Pro Tools doesn't have. I could be wrong, but I think Pro Tools doesn't have the polarity flip button, right? Like other DAWs, right? Polarity invert, and just sometimes just doing that magically transforms your mix from like sounding thin to becoming like full and fat. It's all phase and polarity, man. Okay, so let's go back to Tom 3. Okay, let's go back there. Okay, here I'm hearing that little bit of hairiness again, which is like, a little bit of that distortion thingy. So I'm just curious. I'm not sure whether, I know you're driving busy, so I'm just wondering whether you are privy to any information on why does the toms, right, sounds as if they've been saturated. Is it because of the particular patch, or was it the sound processing on your end, which is fine, right? I make it work, but the toms here, right, especially this low tom, does sound as if it's running through some. It's got a little bit of tube distortion or something going on. And this is even if I bypass my tape and console emulation plugins. See, it's bypassed now. You still hear that edge, that hairy kind of a distortion too. Okay, right. Da 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 da. Hey, Shizumaru official. Tom 2 got a hell of a lot of lows. IMO. Okay, yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. That's good. That's the intention. You want it to be big and booming. Okay. You want it to be big, man. This is hard rock. There's nothing shy or nothing polite about it. Okay. So okay, right. So that still has got that. Let's get rid of. Okay, there is something at about 500. So there's also the that note. It's about 180. Same thing, yeah. So it seems to be lacking a little bit of that stick attack. Let's bring it up at about 6. There you go, that's better. Sweet. Okay, so let's go back to the toms. So the toms as well are all right bust into a group as well. Now for toms, I usually don't need anything more than 10K. We can take out, all the 10K and above. We don't need all that super ultra high frequencies. And back to that reverb. So let's set that reverb again. Nice. Sweet. Okay, so let's play from the start. Nice. Awesome. There we go. That's the drums. Okay, let me just go back to this. Let's investigate this section. Let me just maybe invert the polarity again and see what's happening. Okay. I personally feel that, it still needs a little bit more low end here. There we go. Nice. All right, okay. So I mentioned just now I don't really put a lot of compression on the individual channels, but what I do is I do put right. So I do strap on a compressor across the drum bus, and my favorite one that I use is actually the API 2500. So I've dialed in, usually for my drums, I already have this dialed in a certain way. I just need to play around with the attack. So let's listen, right? Nice. Okay. Bypass. It's a lot tighter, but usually what I will do is let's change the attack time. Okay, this is like the fastest attack time. Cool. Right. So at 0.03, which is super fast, it's really grabby. It's really grabbing the transients. So sometimes what I would want is I would still want to let that transient go a little bit. So I brought it back up to about 1 millisecond, which is still really fast actually. So it's still grabbing onto drums, but it's not too grabby lah to the transients. But here's another point I want to say. This is something that was taught to me by the late and great Slipperman. It's a phrase that is right. Set and don't forget. So what this means in mixing is that you arrive at certain settings, whatever processing that you're applying, your EQ, your compression settings, set it, move on to the next thing, right? Because at this stage in time when it's just drums, there's not enough information to know or to determine whether this is right or wrong. You have no idea how it sounds in context with the bass, how it sounds in context with the guitars, with the vocals. So that amount of compression that I had earlier, if we had a very fast attack, might be too much, or it might not be enough. Conversely, what I have right now, which is 1 milliseconds, might sound just nice when everything is in, okay? Because now it doesn't sound, that transients coming through, but when everything comes in, that might actually help. So it's what we call, right? It's what, it's being, that phrase is called, set and don't forget, okay? So set, don't forget, we may need to come back and change this later once everything is in. So there we go. That's the drums. Let's move on quickly to the bass. Okay, so same thing, all right? Tape console emulation is in here. So let's check out the bass. Okay, let's play this section. Very nice. Okay, so let's try one thing here, okay? And this is something that's called the Andy Wallace. It's referred to as the Andy Wallace trick. I mean, it's attributed to Andy Wallace. So what that does is, I think it's a combination of a Neve EQ, right? Something like the Neve EQ along with the SSL EQ as well. So let's try this technique. This is something that's used on bass to get a huge bottom end, right? So what we want to do is let's set first of all the frequency. Let's set let's say 40 hertz, right? Typically on a 4-string bass, that's the lowest note that you will get lah, right? On the low E, right? Technically it's a 41.5, 42 hertz, right? The low E. Okay, but what this does is we set it at about 40 hertz and we boost it by a ginormous, right? Basically max all the way, 16 dB. Okay, this is going to sound really obnoxious. Okay, so 16 dB, right? But we also set at the filter, right? The high pass filter set about 40. But even at this stage, this is going to sound ridiculous. Okay, it's the low end boost. So let's check it out without, and then with. Okay, now this is a ridiculous low end boost. Okay, but this is where it pairs together with, okay, also the SSL EQ. So that's set at also about 40 hertz. So, I think the combination of both of their curves of the high pass filter helps to sort of smoothen out, right, the bottom end, so that you're not getting way too much of the sub 20, 30, 40 hertz, 50 hertz kind of a region, right? But this helps a lot. So this one, add that in combination with, right, the bell, and usually this is anywhere between 100 to 200 to 300. So you just got to find the right frequency, right, to sort of carve out that top. So I think about 190 at about 200 hertz. Okay, right. So a couple of things as well. Now, to make the comparison much more fair, let me just bring in trimmer in here, because obviously that low end 16 dB boost has made this bass like sound really, really loud. Okay. Nice. Got to compensate by about 5 dB. I like that. So now we got a huge, really big bottom end, which is not too boomy. So this is one of the tricks which is attributed to Andy Walls. Whether actually it really is something that he does, I don't really know. Okay, so here we go. So the bass, right? Shizumaro says tom distortion could be fixed with a gate, maybe. No, it's not a thing. It's already baked into the sound, right? That distortion is already baked into the sound. If I gate it, then your tom has got no sustain already, right? So, right, okay, here we go. Right, 6 snare, by the way. Right, again, shout out. This is all, Busy, okay? It's all thanks to Busy. The source sounds good. Bass goes into a group, right? So, processing wise, this is how my template is, okay? Once again, I do have a video on the channel that talks about my mixing template. Template is there. It's a Cubase template, but you can check it out, right, to sort of see what I have in terms of my template. So the bass goes into this bus and a couple of things. So first things first that I have is Wave C4. So this is a multi-band compressor, but I only have the low band working. So what the purpose of this C4 here is just so that it will control the really, really bottom end, right, of the bass. So here we're talking about, usually 200 hertz and below. By default, I usually set it about 180. Okay, fairly slow attack, medium attack, medium release. Okay, so this is to control the really, really bottom end, so that later on, right, following after this, that bottom end does not cause the compressor that's going to come after this to, right, work way, way too hard again. So these are some of the things that working in digital seem to, right, work a little bit better, right? In digital, if you process things in series, have things work not so hard, because in real life, I probably wouldn't do this. Like in real life, if I was mixing and I had, which I do have, right, a real 1176. I remember just this week I was recording a vocal, right, for a singer. I want to say who was awesome female vocalist, right, and doing the ad libs, right, when she was like really belting out, we were hitting like 10, 12 dB gain reduction on the 1176, the hardware 1176 I have, and it sounded great. But somehow in the plugin realm, when you push it that hard, it kind of falls apart. It doesn't have the same musical effect lah. So this helps to sort of get around the problem with plugins, having them all do a little bit. Okay, so this Wave C4. So you can see it's just working on the bottom. Let me just solo this band. Yeah, so making sure that bottom end is not going to push, right, the compressor that follows after this. So the next thing I have is a 1176. Let's turn it on. Okay, so let me just set this down. This is going to be fairly aggressive. Bypass. This is really good, okay? Yeah, so once again, kudos, right, to KVB, King Vanta Black, right, to Amy, actually, who does most of the bass and the guitar parts recorded at home. If I'm not mistaken, what Amy told me was all he used was just the Boss multi effects, and straight into his Focusrite audio interface. No fancy campers, no fancy, whatever neural DSP or X effects or anything like that. A simple Boss multi effect right direct into the audio interface, and it sounds great. There we go. Listen in context. Nice. Okay. So I've set it so that the kick drum will in here. I prefer that the kick drum attack would be ahead of the bass. Some people prefer it the other way, but I just prefer having the kick drum. I think most people actually prefer the kick drum to have the punch, right, and the bass to sit behind the kick drum in terms of where the attack of the transient is. So next thing, okay, is Bass Rider. This is a very useful plugin. It's basically cheating, okay, right? So this really helps to even out the bass. So let's just set the. All we need to do is just set the target level, and Bass Rider does the rest of the work for you. Bypass. Nice. Okay, really cool. Now, we're not done yet. MV2. So I've sung praises about MV2 with such an amazing plugin. On what an amazing plugin it is. So simple, but what it does is simply magic. Okay. So what MV2 does under the hood, right? It's hard to explain. It's like a mixture of expansion. It's a mixture of parallel compression. It does something that in the past would take a fairly complicated signal path. You need to do a parallel. You need to have things that are in series. But MV2 boils it down to just three really simple controls. So, all right, what we do is bringing up the low level compression. So this helps to bring all the low level details out. So things such as the pick attack of a guitar, for example, or in the case, right, the transient of the of anything basically. It also brings up the sustain. It brings up things like the harmonics as well. So all the good stuff, the energy, the thing that gives a part or an instrument all the excitement. Turning that low level thing up, it's like adding excitement lah. That's the way that I would describe it. Okay, all right. So I would bring this up, but downside is, okay, we got to be careful again. Equal volume comparison. Right, let's turn this down. You're hearing a little bit of that distortion there, which is, again, it's good. Bypass. About 6 dB. Right, cool. Right. I'm hearing a little bit more. Again, it's bringing out the harmonics. The note clarity is a little bit better as well, right? Okay, now, so sometimes there will be some overhanging notes, and it could be also because of the super 16 dB boost as well. on this note. Speed of overhang at about 208 hertz. Nice. Okay, lovely. So the last thing on the bass I'm gonna drop in would be FGA again, the API EQ. Right. What I love to do is again something which I've learned from watching Chris Lauderdale's. It's 800 hertz. It's like a magic frequency to bring out the clarity of the bass. There you go. Awesome. Very, very cool. Alright, King Vanta Black says kudos to Daniel Eddy. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think you guys mentioned, right? Right. Daniel of Massacre Conspiracy, right? He and Busy do really well. Understood the original night. Have a great time working with them. So awesome, man. Musicians which I've worked with before, Busy, right? Daniel, right? Also as well, because Daniel has a session for us with for both Pop Shawit and also Project EAR as well. So awesome. Really, really nice. Okay, so here we go. That's your drums and your bass. Let's move on to guitars. Okay, so now guitars, same thing. All right, let's bring in the guitars, man. That's where the fun begins. This is where the fun begins. All right, okay. So here's what I mean by right set and don't forget. Now in context now with the bass, with the guitars, now it feels like the snare is way too bitey. So okay, there's two things I can think about it. Either I bring the snare group down by about 3 dB, or let's check out the attack settings on the compressor. So how about this? Okay, so let's bring this settings back down. See? All right. Again, set and don't forget, okay? So maybe having this back down at the fastest attack helps to sit the snare drum in context with everything else. Because when it was at 1 milliseconds, the snare kind of took away too much attention to it, right? Because again, being a guitarist, I'm biased towards guitars. I wanted to hear the guitar riff, you see. So that, it helps to sort of have the snare just back off a little bit and not be, jump out too much in front. Okay, let's go again. Again, this is no EQ, nothing, right? Nothing, and it sounds great already. Okay, so what I will do is just to give it a little bit more. I feel it maybe just needs a little bit more bottom. In terms of the brightness, I think it's good. Maybe a touch. So I will put up Better Maker EQ. So people describe this as like a modernized Pultec, and it's actually based on that. You see, the controls at first when you look at it, it looks really, really confusing. Okay, and I have to say, when I looked at it, it turned me off because of the way the controls. But once you get the hang of how it works, the sound is amazing. Okay, all right, so here we go. I want a little bit of bottom. Drop it down by, let's say, about just half a dB. About 1 dB in. A little bit more bottom there. Yeah, I want to feel like the low chugs, right, need to move a little bit of air. All right, really, really cool. Now, I would probably just drop in just a little bit of reverb. So the distortion guitars on this are dry, but just to give it a little bit of that sort of an 80s kind of a vibe, I would just drop in a very subtle reverb, okay? Like a very, very, very subtle. So like a really short guitar plate, and just mix it in a tiny touch. Okay, let's listen back to. Right, so this is very short. So if I press stop, you can listen to the tail. Right? Okay, and not only that, in context with everything, I definitely need to bring up the reverb on the snare as well. Okay, let's EQ the reverb a little bit. Alright, let me just back off on this EQ just a tiny touch. Not much, just about a dB and a half, okay? Alright, okay. So let's drop in some reverb here on the overheads. Let's see how that goes. So this is again something that apparently Chris Lawlelch does. He adds reverb on his overheads, okay? And I do that sometimes, from time to time. There you go. Right, okay, very cool. So that's better. Again, set and don't forget, if something bugs you, right, mixing is not a linear process. It's not something that you go from A, B, C, D all the way to Z. Sometimes you are doing A, B, you jump to F, G, H, right? And then sometimes you go back all the way back to C again. It's not a linear thing, all right? So now at this part, which is like the second part of the verse, right? Okay, where this comes in, probably a bit of automation to bring it down, but I feel that maybe that bottom end is causing a little bit of boominess at that certain frequency. So how to deal with it? Let's bring in our good friend TDR Nova, which is a dynamic EQ. You're gonna see this a lot more, okay, when we play with the vocals later. But basically, what this does, right? Let's go back to where that second. Let's go to where that second verse comes in. Here we go. There it is. Yeah, that particular note, that sort of booms a little bit too much. So let's just dial in, okay? All right, band number 1, solo. So there's about 190 hertz around that region. So what we want to do is just, right, I'll activate the dynamic section of this. So what this does, right, being a dynamic EQ, it will only, right, apply the attenuation at around that target frequency only when the threshold is increased. So it's like a a level sensitive where it's like a it combines characteristics of both a compressor and also an EQ, so it behaves like that, you see. But it's like a frequency specific compressor, okay? Let's go back to that part, that section. Wider the Q ability. It's bypass. Yeah, that helps to tighten up that part actually. Alright, my screensaver turned on again. Yeah. Nice. That's cool, right? That also does not cause the plate reverb at the end to bloom too much as well, because that was part of the reason why, having that reverb there, so it caused a little bit of the low end, the bottom end to bloom. Speaking of which, let's maybe fine tune this bottom end of the plate reverb. So let's set it all the way to wet first. So let's just listen to just the reverb alone. There you go. That's much better. Right, that helps to dial in that helps to, to dial in the filter and the EQ settings. So let's bring this back to. That's better. That's a lot tighter, okay? That's a lot tighter there. Okay, so, all right, we've got a bunch of other stuff. Let's maybe play with the clean guitars first of all. Let's drop in the clean guitars. Nice. And again, it sounds really good off the bat already, I would probably just EQ it just to take off a little bit of that extreme top end. Alright, so alright, a little bit of compression to just soften things a little bit. It is a little bit spiky. Yeah, just round it off a little bit. Yeah, okay, that's a little bit better. So it's not as spiky, all right? It's a little bit warmer, a little bit rounder. All right, so let's play around with, let's add a little bit of delay to the clean guitars, okay? Let's go with plugin alliance. Oh no, let's go with Sound Toys. Okay, shout out to Sound Toys, man. They make such incredibly amazing, awesome plugins. I mean, so many good developers. There's so many good choices now. You know, it's like can't be picky, man. So let's go with maybe let's say pick notes with them. Nice. Let's go with the ping pong. Mm. In context, a bit more. Yeah, so this delay just gives a little bit of that exciting motion that's going on. Bow, 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 right? Instead of just being a boring chang, it just gives that a little bit, I would be tempted to even put in a little bit of tremolo and let's just play around with it and see what happens if we do that. Okay, before or after? Let's put it before and let's just go with right? Your standard tremolo, okay? Stock one. So 16 notes. Just to give it a bit of, a bit of a warbly feel to it. Yeah. Especially towards the sustain. So you get a little bit of that. That makes it a little bit more interesting. So, right, there we go. Those are the main guitars, the main rhythm guitars, and the verse guitars, which is the clean. Now, next thing we want to move on, right? And I would typically very, very early on, right? One mixing tip is that you will want to bring in the vocal as early and as quickly as possible. Okay, so one of the things is a lot of people sometimes, especially when you start out mixing, the challenge always is like, oh, how do I get my vocals to sit in the mix? How do I get my vocals to sit in the mix when everything is, there's so much stuff going on. There are so many tracks or so many parts in the mix, and really one of the best ways, okay, of doing that is to try to bring in your vocal as early as possible. So when I started mixing, and I think a lot of us who do that when we first started out, what we do is that we mix everything, we mix all the tracks, everything music sounds perfect, right? All the tracks, all the different parts of the arrangement, we mix it first, then we try to mix in the vocal, and sometimes we struggle to do that because all the space, all the sonic space has been taken up by all the other parts. So instead, what I have done, right, and I've been doing for many many years already, is once I get to I bring in the vocal as soon as possible. That means in this case, right, once I got the drums, the rhythm section, your bass, and the main chordal instrument down, immediately I bring in the vocal. I'm going to skip all the other stuff, all the other lines, all the synth parts. Yeah, they are important. They add color to the mix, of course. But without, right, the vocal being there and engaging with the listener, the whole mix just falls apart lah. So let's bring in the lead vocal, okay? So this is Alif, all right? Right, great vocal performance. So let's just bring it in. Right, okay.
Beginning the story of wise execution.
Alright, so first thing that comes to mind is that, okay, performance is great, but sometimes on some of the lower notes, it does get kind of buried, it gets lost in the mix, so we need all of this to be really, really upfront lah. So let me run you through, right, what I would do with vocals. So I would split the processing and the thought process into two halves. One would be corrective processing, right? And the second half is called creative. So in the corrective stage, what we're trying to do is to just get rid of all the, all the sort of the unwanted, the ugly parts of the part. And you can think of this sort of thought process on anything, on any instrument as well, not just vocals. Okay, so let's just do this first of all. So first of all, I would start with a half-pass filter. Let's set it at about 12 dB per octave. Just to get rid of all the bottom.
Say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
All right.
Read and say in the God name.
Okay, right. So there may be a little bit of woofiness at
Who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul.
at about 440, around that. Okay. Okay. So with this, right, I bring in TDR Nova again. So TDR Nova is, as I said, it's a parallel dynamic EQ. You can get the link, right? It's also should be down in the description. It's free, by the way. So, right, big shout out, kudos to the Tokyo Dawn Labs, right, for making this version free. So now, when it comes to vocals, I will engage the dynamic EQ, but I will go into wide band mode. So this means that all of the bands are gonna have the same settings lah. So we're gonna go with a 3-to-1 ratio. Fastest attack, fastest release. Okay, why we want a fast attack? Because we want the dynamic EQ to act as soon as possible whenever you get those right frequencies and resonances. But at the same time, we want the release to be as fast as possible because once it's not there, we want it to let it go. Okay, you want the EQ to sort of release and not act upon it. So that's why parallel dynamic EQs are really powerful because they are really transparent. They act when it's needed, and when it's not, they preserve the EQ, right, in compared to like a standard traditional EQ where the boost or cut is always there whether you want it or not. Okay, so this only kicks in. So let's bring in the threshold.
Beginning the story of wise execution.
Maybe a little bit.
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story.
Okay, very good, very nice. Okay, so you get a little bit of that there.
Of wise execution. Read and say in the God name who creates
At around 1.1K, you get a little bit of that.
this wicked rhythm, melody.
So this one, of course, will be at the narrowest Q because it's a very specific frequency there.
And soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Very nice. Okay, let's listen in context.
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul.
All right, very good. All right, so that's much better. So it also goes through the same thing, right? The tape and console emulation. Only difference with vocals is that I have a slightly different processing. I'll show you here. Right, so instead of the 1073, I'm running this through the Hollywood, right, virtual tape collection, because this, instead of the 1073, which is a solid state, this is like a tube, right? Because tube preamps will tend to flatter vocals a little bit. So, with vocals, right, a tube preamp helps as well, okay? So, but one of the things that's really cool over here is this, what I really love is I love parallel compression. So this is FG Stress, which is their version of the Empirical Labs Distressor. So this is actually set to a parallel setting, right? So what it does is that it is mixing. Parallel compression is when you mix a uncompressed, the dry signal, so to speak, along with a heavily processed, right? In this case, heavily compressed signal and blending them together. I started with a 50-50 mix, so let's check it out how much.
And saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody.
Yeah, when it peaks, it gets to up to 12 dB of gain reduction, so it's blended, right? So I love parallel compression on vocals because it's very invisible. You get the solid, the density and the energy of the heavily compressed vocal, but you still have, right, the dynamics of the original uncompressed. So you blend it in, and then that's how you get it, lah. So
read and say in the God name who creates.
Okay, but I want to try something a little bit different today. It's a technique which I saw, all right, online, and it's something that's got to do with the SSL processing. Okay, so we will need the SSL dynamics here. So I'm gonna bypass my usual parallel and let's compare it and see. Okay. So I think what they do is that so the release is set at the particular setting, but what they do is that they bring the ratio down. The technique is like that, right? Let's bring the ratio down to 0, threshold all the way, okay, right? Attack is, if I'm not mistaken, it should be fast attack. So apparently this approach, right, works with the SSL style of compression. So let's try it out and see, okay? So release is set at the default, which is 0.5. Okay, threshold all the way, okay, all the way to the lowest threshold as possible. And what they do is actually they play with the ratio. So let's check it out. The goal is to try and get around 6 dB gain reduction. So let's play around with this and see, okay?
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Okay,
Read
okay, right. Interesting. So definitely with this, I need to do a little bit of makeup gain.
say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Not bad, actually.
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody and soul.
Okay, on the end, I sort of can hear it reacting. So
Beginning the story.
let's compare it with like my usual, like the parallel, right?
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody and soul, beginning the story of
Okay, right, okay. That technique with the SSL Dynamics compressor was pretty impressive. It was kind of getting close to what was interesting, but again, I think on certain notes it became a little bit too audible. So maybe it's something that I have to play around with. So it's good to have all these arsenals of like techniques and methods and to have at your disposal. but don't rely on that same thing over and over again. Sometimes when one technique that it's good to have maybe habits and shortcuts, presets, so to speak. But if the way that you processing something is not working for this certain part, even though it has worked for 100 mixes that you've done before, but on mix number 101 you find that it doesn't work, be open to try something else, to try something totally different. Swap out a different EQ, swap out a totally different compressor. It has, if you watch some of the past mix streams as well, sometimes things I also discovered right here when I'm doing it live. Switching over, usually 1176, but sometimes the LA2A works, right? You see, I pretty much 95% of the time, I'm always using 1176. But sometimes, hey, the LA2A is the one that works well. So in this case, I guess, right, what I have, right, with the parallel is a bit better. It's a lot more transparent. I still get that evenness, but, I don't get too much of that grabby feeling there. So worthwhile exploration. Okay, so let's move on, okay? So last thing on this will be a de-esser, right, in this case, right? Just
Read and say in the God name who creates
nice.
this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wife execution. Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wife execution.
All right, okay. So interesting thing is that I've noticed that, again, this is where I think automation will come into play. In the verse, the reverb sounds a little bit too much.
And say in the God name who creates.
But, when the full band with all the distortion guitars in the chorus and all that kicks in, we probably need to automate, right? All these things are. So automation is where a lot of things are gonna have to happen later on. But since we don't want a vocal, let's continue on, okay? So last thing over here, right, would be RCOM. This is the Renaissance compressor. So this is set at a fairly fast attack and a kind of a medium release. And this does, again, this is not doing much, okay? 4.4 ratio. What this is just doing is just catching the loudest peaks. So let's just play it.
And say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wife execution.
And this is just really, it's just touching, right? It's just nudging the compression. I just realized one thing. I just realized that my gain structure setting on my mic here is lower than what is usual. This happens when you're not haven't been doing this mix stream for quite a while. Okay, so just a second. Okay, let me just tweak this. I'm gonna be a lot louder after this. Okay, hang on a second. And hello, folks. Okay, I should be a lot louder right now. And this means I got to compensate and bring up the music a lot louder. So it's going to be about 3 dB louder now. All right. Okay, this is when you don't do this on a weekly kind of basis. You go a little bit rusty. So it's going to be louder on you guys, right? When you're listening this from this point on, it's going to be slightly louder. And I think you'll be able to hear me better as well over the music, okay? Here we go.
And say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul.
All right. Okay. Cool. So one thing, all right, definitely there's going to be automation that needs to be done. What I am going to be doing tonight is going to be mostly the broad strokes. Okay. So to show every single detail of these individual automation moves, especially when it comes to the vocals. It's not going to be on this live stream, okay? It's going to be later at a later date, either super late to the later tonight, because that takes a long time, okay? And you'll be super boring to watch over a live stream. So I'm going to show you tonight. Going to be mostly all of the broad strokes, okay? So let's move on now. Next thing, I think maybe this would be an appropriate place for me to try one of the tricks which I use quite often, and this is the vocal thickening trick. Okay, so there's a video again on the channel, right, on the YouTube channel. Please do check it out, right? It's you just search under vocal thickening trick, it will bring you straight to the video. And what this does is, all right, I'm going to send this lead vocal to this plugin which is called Doubler, right? So let me just pull it up. Doubler is here. So Doubler is by Waves. It's as the name implies, it's like, it's like a doubler plugin lah. You have the dry and then you have your wet, a duplicate, you do copies of it. But what this does is that this is actually a trick that we're going to do, and I'll demonstrate how to do it, okay? First of all, though, very important, I have to make sure I turn off, right, all my stereo bus plugins, because you don't want it to be running through that twice, you see, otherwise you'll be like double cooked, right? So here we go. What we do, run it to Doubler, and basically actually Doubler's default settings, right, which is this. We start off with the detune value of +3 on the left and -3 on the right, and we export and we bounce it down to a file. Okay, so let's set it out to Doubler, export. Okay, Doubler +3. Make sure that it is the correct file path. Making sure my capitalization is correct, because I'm such an OCD person. Doubler +3, create audio track, insert the pool, and voila, let's do this, okay? Appreciate, man. I really appreciate you all watching this. It's awesome as well. Shout out again to King Vanta Black. Shout out to Busy Shizumaru as well. Thanks for tuning in. Kate, I'm just wondering, is this Kate? Are you Kate the singer? I don't know whether you're still there or not. So we're going to export this, right, a total of 4 times, and each time we're going to change the detune value. Okay, I'm going to change the detune value. So the first time is going to be +3, -3, and the second time, which I'm going to do very shortly, it's going to be -6 and +6. Well, so not only did I change the amount, but I also changed, right, the side, the positive, negative side. And the reason why we do so, right, is that if we don't do that, you're going to end up with the vocal sounding sharp on one side and flat on the other, which is going to be weird, okay? So doing this helps to balance this out. So we do another one. This would be Doubler -6. Export the audio. And have a little bit of sip of coffee first. All right. Thanks, everyone. If you're watching this later in the live stream as well, again, do please become a subscriber if you are not yet a subscriber. I really appreciate it. Thank you. We just hit 2,000 subscribers. For a little channel with, minimal production values and all that, I'm really grateful. Thank you for the little small audience. And thank you to all the patrons who have been supporting, right, the channel, financially these past 2 years as well. I mean, the numbers have come up and then down, but those of guys who have stuck it out for so long, right, all this while, I really appreciate all of it. I do want to get back and do a little bit more regular stuff, more content, but life, work, and all the different priorities. Especially the podcasts, right? I think I've done up to 23 episodes right now, and I want to do more because there's way more people that I want to talk to, and not enough disk space for export. Okay, right. Let me deal with this first. I got to clear up some hard disk space. Oh man. Okay, there are some projects which I really have to sort of clear. Not enough hard disk space for export. Permanently delete all this stuff. Okay. See how much space do I have. Should be able to get me through. Oh boy, 309 megabytes. Okay, so I'm going to have to move some stuff away, definitely. Okay. So here we go. I think first thing I want to get rid of would be, okay, I'm doing this off screen, obviously. Okay, so don't mind me. Okay, so that you have stuff to look at. Let me just put this up. Okay, some of these projects which let's see, what can I, oh sorry, I hate to do this like in between, in while we're doing a live stream, but let me just get rid of all of this stuff. Okay, la di da, la di da da. Okay, let me clear some of these tracking projects that do not need, do not need to be critical backups. And how much space can I clear with that? Not a lot, apparently. Let's see more of these. Okay, we can also clear this one. Tracking sessions. Because some of these tracking sessions I don't really need to sort of to save. Da 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 da. What else? What else? What else? What else? Okay. Right. Let's move all of these here. Old tracking sessions. Okay. So let's move on first. There's. All right. So we were about to do +9. So here we go. All right. That should get us by, hopefully. Right. In the meantime, let me just look for stuff that I can sort of delete. Acapellas. These are the old acapellas. What else? What else? What else? What else? Okay. All right. I'll have to sort through all of this later on lah. Okay, and clear out. There's some stuff which I need to sort of back up into my archives and put it in there as well. But man, there's just so much stuff going on lately. This past, a lot of projects that we're doing and working on. A lot of projects on my end. So let's go to the last and final one. Right, it would be -12 and +12. Okay. So we do a total of 4, and that is the vocal ticketing trick. Again, the video, I did a tutorial video on how to do this, right, in my channel. You can go check it out. So I won't, if you want to do a more like a step-by-step process. And I do that using stock plugins, by the way. So just to show you how it can be done using stock plugins, not necessarily something that you have to do using this particular specific Waves plugin, right? Right, let's see what's going on, what's happening. It's coming up to 11 already, so awesome. I try not to go past 12 o'clock nowadays. We try and keep it, the time of these live streams. Let's see, okay. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, there was a problem with the server. Hey folks, are you all getting any issues with the live stream? Okay, now it seems to be okay. It seems to be fine now. All right, okay, there we go. We got it. So we've got these 4 tracks here. Okay, I don't mind the reference mix. Let's bring this up here. So, okay, let's reroute the lead vocal back to the lead vocal bus. Let's turn our stereo bus processing back on. So now you'll hear, right, how these vocal doubler parts sound, right? You know, it's very similar to a chorus effect. You can, of course, achieve this with other plugins as well. It's just a very specific method and specific technique, lah, right? And the benefit of this is that I can still manipulate this later on, right? Just EQ it a little bit more. I find it helpful. So solo.
Read and say in the God name who created.
Yeah, so right there you go. You can hear the oh, hello. Why is my yeah, okay. On OBS Sunny, my face was like filling up the entire screen. So yeah, so that's what it is, right? So what we do is we are going to just blend in this double track, right, with the main vocal, okay? So it's going to get a kind of chorusing, thickening effect.
And say in the God who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
All right, okay. Oh, hang on a second. These are not routed into the lead vocal group. That's why. Okay, let's do that again, right? Because usually it's never higher than the original lead vocal.
Fight, avoid the easy.
Let's start at the quiet bit.
And say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Yeah, so around that, okay? It's meant to be a subtle thing, right? So it's slightly wider. You know, you get a little bit of that modulation, that pitch shifted thing. So now let's solo these.
Fight, avoid the easy,
Okay, so I want to get rid of...
easy prediction, focusing on conquering your
And that's why I would want to render it down to an audio, you see. So, you know, it gives me the ability to sort of fine-tune that, all these double tracks a little bit.
demon and bring out the best in you to be a champion.
Okay, just to shave off some of these frequencies, and there we go. All right, just copy it over, copy it over, copy it over, and let's link the selected channels. Here we go.
And say in the God name who creates.
Maybe down a little bit, I think. Yeah, because it's starting to sound. Again, you don't want too much, right? Again, depends on the context. Sometimes you do want the vocal to sound a little bit more affected. Sometimes you don't. But it's just to subtly make it a little bit thicker, a little bit more denser, slightly have more air around it as well. Okay, being this is, you know, a stereo thing. So let's move on. This is pretty much the we're actually with that we actually crossed over from the corrective stage into the creative stage already. So let's move on with what I've got. Okay, so next thing I have would be another 1176, and this is, you know, let's get a little bit more energy out of the vocal again. So let's, here we go.
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Lovely. Okay, right. I prefer most of the time using the 1176 revision A, which is like the blue stripe, right? It's referred to as the bluey. It's a little bit more grittier. It's a little bit more. It's got a little bit more edge to it, slightly more distortion compared with the LN, right? The revision D onwards, which are cleaner, lah. So, you know, different things, right? Different horses for courses.
Read and say
Bypass.
in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul.
Right. It's a little more solid, it's a little bit more in your face, especially, right? It brings up some of the harmonics as well. So, without going into in-depth, I'm not really using that for dynamic control because that's already being taken care of, right, with the FG stress, right, the parallel processing, and also the RCOM. The 1176 here is more actually used for tone, okay? And without going into a long rabbit hole, right? I'll talk about it in another video next time.
Beginning the
Okay,
story.
so next thing is this Pultec EQ. So this Pultec EQ is actually before the 1176, but what I did was I actually got my 1176 setting here first. I got it to sort of compress, and then I turn on the Pultec, or more of then only I engage. It's just on all this while, then only I engage this. What this is going to do, and it's a little tricky and it's a little bit counterintuitive, is that now I'm going to be pushing these frequencies into the 1176, into the compressor. This is going to cause it to react a little bit differently, so sometimes I will need to tweak stuff, right? I may need to tweak the settings on the 1176 as well. But this is, pushing these frequencies. It's a way of EQing into a compressor, which is something that you would probably want to try and explore lah. I'd go for the broad setting, and let's start with, let's say, maybe 3K. Let's start with that. Typically for male, it's around that.
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of what execution.
Let's go 4K.
Fight, avoid. Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the
So
story.
3K is actually a good starting point. So let's listen in context, okay?
And say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution. Fight, avoid the easy prediction, focusing on conquering your demon and bring out the best in you. Be a champion. I believe they say the road is truly long to be true.
All right, yeah. 4K, especially when you get to the higher note, the higher registers, starts to be a little bit strident, a little bit piercing. It's something that can be dealt with, but I kind of like where 3K is, right? And it's sometimes it's guesswork, but it's sometimes when you hear a vocal, you sort of kind of know what it needs, lah. All right, so I would actually I'd do a little bit of attenuation, probably just to attenuate some of the super top end.
They will never say it's gonna be extreme.
Very long. Look at that awesome vocal performance, man. Okay, so now next, okay, Pultec right into the 1176. Now, with all of this extreme compression, sometimes, right, it's going to bring up a lot of the all the sibilances lah. So sometimes there will need to be another de-esser, right? There's a de-esser early on, right, in the chain. So now there's another second de-esser, right? So here we go.
And say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution.
Awesome. Okay. Now, next thing. So, another incredibly powerful plugin, right, is the Vocal Writer. And hello, why is the... Come on, man. It's not cooperating. I'm trying to get the pre-post thing. Okay, there we go. Good boy. All right, so Vocal Writer. So this is, of course, right, the relative to the bass writer that we saw earlier. But this is, of course, right, geared more towards vocals. So similar, this is really helpful. It helps to really sort of level out the whatever parts in this case. So set the target. I want to bring the range a little bit higher up. And let's find the suitable target, okay?
Read and say in the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody and soul, beginning the story of wise execution. Fight, avoid the easy prediction, focusing.
All right, okay. So clearly, right, we need to do a little bit of basic automation here. So let's do this.
Beginning the story of wise execution. Fight, avoid the easy prediction, focusing on conquering your demon and bring out the best in you to be a champion. I believe they say the road is truly long to be true. They will never say it's gonna be extreme. Cry if you lose.
Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, so it's tricky here again.
Fight, avoid the easy prediction.
All right, so a couple of things as well. I think when you get to that second second half of the verse, there's still one thing that kind of bugs me. So let's deal with it. That little. Right, there's a little bit of that note there which kind of just pokes out.
And bring
Right, and so it only happens where you get the sort of palm meter, da 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 da, that little part. So let's engage that.
execution, focusing on
Okay, and then once we get out of that, right, we can bypass the EQ. Right, then
conquering your demon and bring out the best in you to be a champion. I believe they say the road is truly long to be true.
so 1 dB.
They will never say it's gonna be extreme. Cry if you.
Okay, and then when it kicks back to the chorus, this comes back up all the way. Okay, so again, these are all going to be just broad strokes for now. All the fine-tuned automation will come later at a later stage lah. So back to the vocal, right? So again, see, it's not a linear process. Set it, don't forget. Okay, sometimes when something pops up, we need to deal with it right away. So back to now that we've sort of put the levels roughly there. Now let's go on with some effects. So what are the typical effects that I usually do on a vocal? Let's start off first of all. I would kind of like to place the vocal like inside a nice sounding room, you know, a nice expensive sounding like maybe wood room, sort of so to speak. So what I would do is I actually use Super Tap, which is actually a delay, right? But this is set to a very, very, very short, it's almost like a slap back with no feedback because you don't want multiple reflections. You just want one single slap back. But the key thing is that in here, right, at least in Super Tab, this plugin, there is an EQ section which you can do a low pass filter or high cut. So everything above 1.5K is filtered off, is shaved off, okay? Again, you can always do this with other plugins as well. It does not have to be Super Tab, okay? So let me exaggerate this for you. You'll hear how it sounds.
Read and say in the God name who created
It's like a, almost like a slap back, but this is obviously way too much. So let's just bring it to a point where you just want to hear it.
This wicked rhythm, melody, and soul.
And very important, in context with the music.
And saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody, and soul. Beginning the story.
You're right, okay? So this gives the vocal immediately a sense of 3D space, like, instead of just like being there. It gives you that little bit of 3D space, a little bit of that width there, and, a bit of three-dimensionality. So that's one. Second thing we're going to drop in is going to be a mono delay. So I love setting a mono delay, and the one I use is BX delay. Set it to 8 notes, right? And let's just listen to it.
And saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody, and soul. Beginning the story of wise execution.
All right, so yeah, you can hear it in solo. Let's put the ducking on.
Read and saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody, and soul.
Yeah, I set the ducking so that when the vocal is up there, it holds it back, right, a little bit, and then only in the spaces in between does it let the vocal come out.
Beginning the story of wise execution. Fight, avoid the easy prediction. Focusing on conquering your demon and bring out the best in you to be a champion. I believe they say the road is truly long to be true.
Very cool. All right, so we've got this mono delay. The delay gives you the front and back, okay? It gives you the front and back effect. So what I'm going to drop in right now is a little bit of reverb, actually. So again, to give it a little bit more space. And this one I've pulled up. This is actually the EMT 140, right? Which is a plate.
And saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody, and soul. Beginning the story of wise execution.
So very subtle. Same thing, I want to EQ the reverb. So around 1K, I want to cut out a little bit of 1K because it gets a little honky. So maybe just a little bit of shimmer on top.
Focusing on conquering your demon and bring out the and saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm, melody, and soul. Beginning the story of wise execution.
All right, very cool. So another typical trick that I would do, just to, again, in mixing, the key thing is that you want dynamics. And I mentioned earlier, dynamics is created from your arrangement, your choice of sound, the parts, right, that you do. But in mixing as well, you can also lend a hand, okay, to all this. So one of the things that we would typically do is that, right, in the verses and the pre-choruses are all like on a mono delay. So when we get to the chorus, what I would do is I would usually kick in the stereo delay here. And let's check it out first of all.
It's gonna be extreme. Cry if you lose.
Very cool. So when you stop it, then you can hear, right? There's like a stereo delay. Let me just tweak these settings. So it's the same thing. So mono delay was on eighth notes, but with the stereo delay, we wanted to have a longer delay throw, so it will be quarter notes. But I'm gonna tweak this a little bit. I set the offset. I'm gonna change this to dotted, right? The right hand side to quarter dotted. Okay, so this will give me different delay times for both my left and right. You get a more ping-pongy, bouncy kind of thing lah. But when you do this, you also have to increase the feedback, all right, of the quarter note on the left hand side, okay? Because, right, with different delay times, they will trail off differently lah. So have a bit more feedback for the left so that they will sort of end up, if otherwise the delay will always end up on one side, okay? So that's what we're gonna do. So this is gonna kick in on the chorus. Let's automate this. There you go. And then out. Yeah, so then it goes out. Back to the verses again. So let's drop this maybe on the word cry. Nice, right? So again, in solo, you can hear it, okay? Let's do the same thing for the next chorus. And this one.
You tell me now what you want me to do. Show me what you got inside of.
Nice, okay, so that kicks off, right? So let's go back. So all the way, right? Chorus all the way to the end. Let's have the stereo delay. So, right, it's a very very common technique, right? You have everything. You have your vocal having a mono delay throughout the verse, maybe throughout the pre-chorus, and then when the chorus kicks in, right, the stereo delay as well kicks in. You know, the vocal just becomes wider. You know, it just becomes more exciting. There's movement all around on the sides as well. That's how, right, one of the things that we apply tricks to sort of create dynamics lah. So let's go back. So let's do another thing that I would want to drop in, right? In terms of dynamics as well. So sometimes people add parts, you know, we add guitar lines on top, we add harmonies, things to make it a little bit brighter. But sometimes we neglect the bottom end also. You don't forget, when you want things to sound bigger, not only do you make things add more stuff on top, but your bottom also needs to just increase in size. And there's a very subtle way to do it, and that is just by using a little EQ, right? So what I will do is every time the chorus kicks in, right, I will have this little shelf here. Just 1 dB at 100 hertz, okay? So this is how it's gonna go. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the bottom end is just gonna slightly grow. It's gonna grow a little bit as well. Not only right, the top end. So it's one little thing which can make a big difference, right, towards the size of your mix. Alright, so we'll do the same thing for all the choruses. The 3. There we go. Bow. Very cool kind of unison thing. Let's move on and let's go right to the very last chorus. And then kicking in the very last chord. Awesome. Really, really cool. All right, cool. Let's move on to, right, BBs next. So with backing vocals, okay, it's pretty straightforward. So I actually have this little preset here, which is on, again, all the BBs are all going to be bused to a group. And one of the things here is that I'm using this little Eventide, the H3000, okay? So this little setting here. Okay, so let's sort of listen to how it sounds just on its own.
Just give up on the, you will die. Just
All right, okay. So straightforward. It's like three parts. You've got a high, you got a mid, you got a low harmony. So let's deal with it one by one. So the first one would be the high. So I'm setting this to a similar setting that I did for the main vocals, except you don't have to be so elaborate lah. I will always have the FG stress with the parallel processing. With vocals, parallel processing all the way, man. That is, I just love that. So let's go with the high harmony first.
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up
Okay, this is one part clip.
on this fight, you will die. Just give up
Around 2K, it's just a little bit of whistly on that 2K. So just chop it.
on this fight, you will die.
Okay, right. Pretty simple. So let's just pan these all the way hard left, hard right. We can link the two. Just okay. So it's easier to control. Let's just balance it.
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Very nice. Okay, let's go with the mid harmony now.
Fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Which is essentially actually just a unison, right?
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
At about 1.5, 1.6, a little bit. Oh,
Just give up.
and okay, it does not need all the top end. So, you know, around 15K, I'll just shave it off. All right, copy the settings over. So these are gonna be 75, 75 out. Let's link these two. Right, so actually, let me just mute the high vocal first, because sometimes if it's unison, it's a bit hard to hear. So these are gonna...
On this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Very cool. And now let's add in the low harmony.
This fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will
So add about 590 or just below 600, just a little bit.
Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Right, okay, super simple. So these low ones are just gonna, it's just gonna be there to add a little bit of weight. All right, it's not really there to be like heard or super prominent. So let's listen to this. Let's blend this in.
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Okay, right. So the BBs can get a little strident, especially the high parts. So TDR Nova again to the rescue.
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up.
Around 5K, around that, between 4 or 5K region. So let's just go with that. A little wider Q as well.
On this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die.
Yeah, just to smoothen it out. Let's listen in context.
Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up on this fight, you will die. Just give up.
Right. Okay. Cool. So let's drop in some effects. Okay. Same. Let's drop in the stereo delay.
This fight you will die.
And also this vocal reverb. Let's bring it in there.
Just give up on this fight you will die. Better shut up and try to survive.
Very cool.
Dissecting all the consequences on the ground.
Very nice. Okay. Yeah, you can hear all the effects kind of swimming around when we stop it. Let's cool. All right. What else are we moving on? That's the vocals. Let's bring in the rest of the stuff. Okay. Let's go in with the synth lead right at the start. Let's listen to this. All right, okay. What I would like to do is to have this be a little bit more aggressive. And FG Stress is a great. It's got a great setting here, right? Synth lead. There you go. All right, let's just tweak it. There we go. Okay, let's listen. Okay, right. It would be nice to just, again, add a little bit of reverb to this. And once again, super plate is really good. Right. In fact, let's just go with little plate. Right. It's a little modulation. Take out a little bit of low end. Take out a little bit of 3K. Let's give it a little bit of air. Let's try doing it with, let's say, FG36, right? So it's a fairly new plugin. So let's see what this does. Very cool. All right. So let's actually spread this out a little bit. And we're going to do that with Waves S1. So not much, just about 1.5. I usually never go more than 1.5. Yeah. With some of these synth and maybe like pads, which we'll do later, I don't mind pushing it out. It's kind of cool to just push it out a little bit wider away from, outside of the speakers. So, just to give it a little bit of space lah. Okay, let's go over to the pads. Okay, pads are very straightforward. Okay, here we go. Okay, now with pads, I would actually use a setting which I actually use for strings. Let me change that over. This one, right, I'll explain a little bit more in detail, but this also employs the Wave C4 with an output compressor, right? So it's like an expansion setting. So let's check it out. Okay, we don't need all the super bottom end. Okay, now this pad, I would again love to add a little bit of reverb, but this time, let's use a different one. So for something really, really like ambient and stuff, I really love Valhalla Supermassive. It's free, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's free. So go check it out, right? It's really, really, really cool. So reverbs, let's go with like a large splashy synth. Let's check it out, okay? Oh, that's lovely ambience. Okay, so this is dry. Ah, so heavenly. Okay, right. Oh, that nice long tail. Okay, again, you can always get carried away, so let's listen in context, okay? Very important.
And saying the God name who creates this wicked rhythm melody and soul begin.
Okay, I'm tempted. Okay, let's add a little bit of air to it. FG36, same thing. So, new transient shaper. I didn't even check. I should have probably tested it out on the drums earlier. See, this is actually a new addition to the whole Slate virtual mix rack modules. But never mind. Let's try with Revival, because Revival is something that you can get for free. I think they allow you to use this. You can actually download this, just without having the subscription. No, not really. Okay, so it's not really getting the because I think it's a fairly dark sounding pad. But let's try with FG36. Maybe this will bring out a little bit of that, excite a little bit of that air. No, it doesn't. Interesting. Okay, so this means there's not much of that air to begin with. Let's try with this EQ. Let's see. Oh, hang on a second. Hey, wait a minute. Okay, this was off just now. Okay, all right, people who are watching this are gonna be like, let's try that again. Yeah, it's just only adding a little bit. It's not doing what I want, and maybe that's the right thing, you know. Maybe it's not supposed to have that. I just want to add a little bit of that air to it. Let's try one more other thing, okay? And that's fresh air. Fresh air, which is also free, if I'm not mistaken. Let's check it out. Wow, that's interesting. It's not really. Wow, it's not even putting out what I want it to do. Is it because of the supermassive? Let's bypass it for a second and just experiment, explore, okay? Okay, yeah. So I guess this particular pad setting is really, really dark. And when you've got nothing above it... okay, let's try something else that can sort of saturate a little bit more. Let's go with Tone Empire. So it's interesting, right? So sometimes, you know, we experiment on stuff where we try to see how we can crank things up. So let's try this one. This is Neural Q. There's a little bit of... let's increase the drive. Okay, you can hear... when I play around with max settings, you can hear it is brighter and darker, but it's not really adding anything to the top. I'm trying to add, you know, those higher frequencies. I may have to go and use a saturation plugin for this. Okay, what a rabbit hole, man. Just over pads, okay? Let's go with the black box analog design, what we hit earlier. Saturation in. Let's go with the air mode. The triode is sort of doing something. Interesting. Interesting. It is brightening it. Let's listen in context, okay?
And saying the God name who creates
Okay, yeah. Because even if you look at the the spectrum analyzer, you see everything pretty much rolls off above 1K. So, whatever I did, if all it did was just generate noise up here, like in the, you know, 16K above region, and it was not getting anything out here. That was really, really interesting. So, when sometimes when there's nothing in the source, you can't really add. Let's try. Okay, let's just go. I think let's try this. Let's drop in like something like a Neve EQ, which has got a, something. There we go. Neve EQ. Again. Yeah, it's not much. It's not doing a lot. Okay, let's go with the parametric settings because the shelf is not giving me what I want. Same thing. Interesting. Yeah, it's not really doing what we needed, what I wanted to do. So, I guess this part can just be there so that we can feel it. All right, that's like a 15-minute sidetrack, just trying to figure out how to get a little bit more air out of pads, man. Okay, so same thing. I would push pads a little bit further outside. So S1 it is again. This is such an old plugin, but all this goal sometimes is to, as they say, just pushing, just pushing this pad slightly outside of the speakers. This work actually. So so these pads are just there to be felt lah, right? Not really there to be like super. It just takes up that little space there. So let's move on to strings. Let's go. Let's check out these strings. All right. So here's where I mentioned earlier for strings. I use this. And for a couple of things, I go with the API. Some things which are a little different. Instead of the 4000, instead of the SSL, I do go for the API, which is cleaner, and the virtual drive is at the minimum lah. So it's as clean as possible. So let's dial in a little bit of things. So there's a little bit of that rosin, 1K. That's a bit of. And 2K, a little bit of. All right, there we go. That's better. Let's balance that in. All right, okay. So to sort of compete, I think we does need a little bit of air. Okay, all right. Seem to be running out of processing power. Let me just double check and see whether my UAD card was running or not. System info. Oh, that's why. I've only got one card running. Okay, so no, never mind. So let's disable the EMT 140 because it's causing the whole system to just glitch when I do that. Okay. Excuse me. All right, needed to sneeze there. Come out to 12. Okay, so. All right, so I think the strings need a little bit of brightening, and we can do that with the revival. Where are you? Okay, there you go, revival. One more time. Let's go with lift. Right, okay, so this sounds like it's a little... Alright, so the strings are going to be a little bit tricky. Okay, let me just take out some of these EQ first, right? Let's just bring it down a little bit. Yeah, so these strings are... Because each of these, each line has got a different tonality to it, each part. So just probably need to, you know, automate and adjust with this, okay? Okay, let's move on. So let's have this string. Okay, very cool. All right. FM piano. All right, let's try to, we'll speed it up for the sake of the live stream. Let's not, right, go too long. FM piano. Here is a, yeah, it's like, you know, like a DX sound. All right. All right. So these does not need to, I want to warm this up a little bit, and FG2A is always a good thing, right? Which is an LU2. Yeah, it helps to take away a little bit of that bitiness of the synth. All right, so I want to bring out a little bit more of the sustain and some, because it's got a little bit of delay effect on this. So MV2 is actually great for this sort of things as well. Do that again. Come. All right, bring this down a little bit. And a bit of 1.5K, just a little boost there. Very cool. All right. So where are we? Back to the case. So back again to this this verse here. Yeah, so you know a little bit of I think I'll do this first. A little bit of automation on the guitars.
Sequences on the ground, accepting the destiny as how it was meant to be. I believe they say the road is.
Okay, when it gets to the pre-chorus, same thing, 1 dB up. So again, broad strokes for now, okay? Right, just you know, just for the sake of showing the live stream again, because I do not want to go too long or too late, right? Just to show you most of the, show you guys most of the, you know, the overall stuff that I would do. Back down to da 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 da. Back to 1 dB. Okay, so some things, right, like in the choruses, I think the synths need to drop down by just about dB. Yeah, so automation, man. A lot of this is going to happen later on. These are just going to be just the rough ones first. All right, so let's move on. Okay, let's move on to the solos. Okay, so let's move on to the main solo first, which happens here. Okay, solos, they deserve their own group by themselves. And usually, let's drop in as usual. You have that. Let's solo this, solo the solo, okay? All right, so this is driving it a little hard. So let me just compensate this. Yeah, all right. Nice, okay? Very cool. Okay, so here we go. So in the solo group, what I would typically do is a couple of things. I would drop in first of all multiply, okay, which I'm not sure whether it's free or not. So this is actually kind of just a kind of chorusing. It's a chorus also modulation plugin, but I tend to use this for guitar solos, right, or any kind of solo parts. So just to add a subtle chorus to the guitar. There you go. Right. So once again, for things like note definition, you know, your pick attack, especially the notes, the sustain, MV2 is again another great tool, man. So this one I may crank fairly high up, so this may be a little loud. Okay, it goes louder, so I need to compensate. Okay, but the main difference now with MV2 is that things like the pick attack, it's a lot more. You hear that a little clearer, so that the note actually feels a little bit more in your face. So that's one of the things, right, that really, really helps with guitars. Sustain as well, and you know, overall the harmonics as well. And next, I would also probably drop in a little bit of tape delay, and this is the one that I've been using quite often. Audio ADs, right? Play. Okay, so sync. Right, let's sync this. So this would probably go with, where do we go? All right, 8th note delays, I suppose. Okay, one tricky thing is that it's got a noise setting here, and sometimes, right, when we don't forget, by default it's turned on, and what it does is it creates like a low level hum. Right, if I turn it up, you hear it. So my recommendation is just turn it off, okay? Right? There's some people who, for the sake of authenticity, right, the real thing has got that hum going on. Just turn the noise all the way down. So here we go. So the main echo, right? So the original thing is only like a mono echo, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, the plugin gives you a little bit of options lah. You can actually turn it into you can actually turn it into a stereo echo if you want to. So here we go. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh. Yeah, that was weird. The delay went mono for a second. I don't know whether it was a bug or something until I adjusted the echo level. Then only it went back out to left and right. That's weird. Okay. So let's check it out. And then the second. So one of the things that the text tricks to sort of give that solo a little bit more space is let's drop the distortion. Okay, then when it kicks back in, let's bring this back up. Again, these are all broad strokes for now. Okay, so when it gets to like the top highest notes, it gets a little strident. So, useful thing in this case would be BX refinement. All right, so. And there we go. So there's this little, I mean, you know, I just go for this little deharsh thing. Yeah, a little bit of automation again. Very cool. All right, so let's jump in this little end distortion parts. These are more to I believe these are more of just to give it a little bit more.
Better
bottom end. All right, okay. Now you got a lot more stuff going on. You got the strings going on, so a lot of automation needs to take place here. Yeah, okay, and you know, processing wise and running OBS, yeah, it's starting to get a little glitchy, okay? Alright, so now when it gets to here, this part, right, one of the ways to sort of solve a little bit of this clutter is, you know, I'll start to spread the guitar solo a little bit to the sides. Okay, let's have the harmony guitar. Maybe a little bit wider. Let's go 50-50. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go 50-50. After this, right, I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit of other things, right? One of the things is, again, due to, is more of how to achieve dynamics. Okay, let's get rid of this track. It's actually an empty track. It's unused. And maybe this works better. Yeah, okay. Especially this last chorus does get a little cluttered, a little congested. A lot of automation needs to happen, needs to take place lah. Okay, at this stage, I would usually already switch over to my NS10s. Currently, I'm mixing on my bigger speakers, which are the Caddies, the LP8s. But it's around this stage I would usually switch over to NS10s to try and get a little balance between all this different stuff. I'll do that right away, but of course you guys won't notice it. Okay. But just to get a different perspective. So for me, it's going to be helpful because it's going to give me a slightly different, not slightly, a very, very different perspective on how the mix sounds when I switch over to the NS10s. And a lot of the fine-tuning balance moves I actually do on the NS10s at a much lower level as well. So okay, let's go to the final stuff, right, that I want to do and want to sort of show you guys is just to add a little bit more of additional sweetening, okay? So some of the things that I would drop in, let's figure out. Okay, let's check out the bus compression. Let's go to maybe the chorus. And what I have here is, you know, hang on a second. One of the channels fell asleep. Okay, so one of the things on my stereo bus compression is I actually have these 3 compressors in series that I've set. So all of them are, the way I work with my master bus compression is that I have all of these with slightly different settings, right? First one is the FG Gray, which is an SSL. So this is like the first one that hits it. So this is kind of always the one that's a little bit the most aggressive one. But even though aggressive, it doesn't mean that, you know, the amount of gain reduction that I'm actually going for is only about a dB. Great. So all of these, right? The FG gray, which is an SSL, the FG red is actually the Focusrite compressor, and then FG mu is the emulation of a Fairchild. All of them are just doing 1 dB, 1 dB, 1 dB, but cumulatively, because right, compression is a logarithmic process. The total compression actually in total of this is actually about 4 dB lah, right? So again, without going into right a detailed explanation of what is all that, just basically things that you need to know. So some additional stuff which I will drop in, right? A little bit of sweetening, right? And I suggest that you can always find something that you can add to do to sort of sweeten the mix in the end. But what I love to add, right, has been the SPL iron. So this is set to MS mode. I would turn off the parameter link, turn off some of the boosts. And the great thing is that, it's got this little tone setting here, which tape roll off or air bass, right, or bypass. So tape roll off gives a gentle kind of a roll off on the top end, right, as if it's working with tape. And one more thing I would just drop, I do not know whether the UAD will let me do it. It's just an instance of the API 560. This is something I learned from my mastering engineer. He just drops this in. This actually brings the center a little bit more solidly, right? A little bit more forward. No boost of any kind, although theoretically, right, technically, when you just run it through, there is a slight, level increase lah. So that's one. And last thing I'm going to show you is a simple trick you could do to immediately, right, enhance your dynamics, and that is by automating the master bus. So the trick is that every time we kick into the chorus, we want to subtly make the listener feel, wow, a little bit more exciting, it's a little bit more energy. Simplest way to do it, it's a very old trick, is just to simply automate the levels, right? So I'm going to do this on the stereo, the master stereo bus. So this is what we do. As the song plays, goes to the pre-chorus, then when it rolls into the chorus, you ramp up, right, very, very gradually, very subtly. For me, I do about a dB, all right? So here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that when it hits the chorus, cry, right, it's just a dB louder. So to the listener, right, for the listener, they just feel like, hey, the chorus, like, more exciting. It's a bit more energy. Everything just sounds a little bit more in your face. But all that's happening is just, it's just a level change. So it's one of the oldest like tricks, psychoacoustic tricks that we use lah. Okay, so coming out the chorus. So same thing. So when we come out the chorus, so coming out the chorus, right? So this ramps back down a dB as well. So okay, so let's copy this and let's do the same thing in the next chorus. Okay, 75. So here we go. So up a dB, ramps up. Right, so this is obviously a longer chorus, so right, so here we will probably drop it down, going into this little bridge section. Right, 1 bar, this little drum roll here. Then this will kick in at the very last. You got it. The very last chorus. There we go. Right. So the vocal might, I might need to pump out the main vocal just like about half dB at the end. But again, I'll do this later on when I'm doing all the automation, which you won't see here. This is something that, it's going to take place. All right. So there we go. a little bump at every time it hits in the chorus. This is it's an old trick that's in the book to make it seem like, the chorus is a little bit more exciting. That's something that you can immediately apply in all the mixes that you do. So there we go. We're coming up about 12:20 right now. Awesome, man. Right. So thank you so much. What you've seen right now is kind of the initial, I would say we're kind of maybe 80% there. Right. So this would be like the initial first draft of the mixer. Okay. So like getting all the balances of everything, roughly everything where it's supposed to be, the overall tonality, and it's usually a good time to take a little bit of an ear break where you work on a mix for maybe a couple of hours and then come back again later. Either take a break, elsewhere, or in this case, probably what I'll do is I'll actually take a break and come back again with fresh ears the next day, right, tomorrow to work on it. Then after that, a lot of the automation work, all the fine detail work is going to happen after this, at the second stage, after we've taken your break. 3 hours plus is always a good time to take a break anyway. So let's see. Right, I guess let's wrap this up, and thank you so much for watching another mix stream. I've got, if once again, right, if you want to support the channel and if you want to support the artist, please head on down to the Patreon page, right, patreon.com. Link is down in the description below. Do check it out. If you're not yet a subscriber, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Got lots of content. I mentioned, right, I've got a lot of tutorials, right, in my channel as well, and the podcast videos which I recorded with a lot of interesting people, lots of stuff for you to check out lah. Right, so I appreciate if you do, and take care everyone. Right, we'll wrap this up, and I'll see you again in another video next time, hopefully soon. Hope to do a little bit more of these as well, and get back to a more regular YouTube schedule, like maybe the latter half of the year. But once again, thank you. Good night. Let's wrap it up by just doing a little quick listen through the song, and right, stay safe everyone. Peace, love, and music. Shout out again to King Vanta Black. Yeah, it's a little glitchy over there. Not just a little, very glitchy. Okay, that's better. Okay, let me turn off the API 560 because the UAD plugins, because the card is not running too. That might be the one that's slowing things down. Let's continue. It's very glitchy, man. Oh man. Might be hitting the stereo bus compression a little hard. Yeah. Let's bring this down a little bit. Yeah, because I could hear in the intro it would start to sound a little squishy. Oh, I love those BVs, man. Awesome. Obviously, the string parts, all that needs to be automated as well. Yeah, it feels like maybe from this part onwards, like the chorus, pre-chorus onwards, the strings just need to be down. Again, these are just broad strokes. Later on, a lot of these adjustments are really, really fine. Alright, man. Okay, cool. Those PVs are so tasty. The guys did a really good job in writing and recording the parts. Right. Vocal wise, it sounds great. Right, yeah. So all the string parts, automation again. Stereo, delays. I may play around with the vocals a little bit more, maybe, you know, like duplicate the lead vocals and just give it a little bit more thickening. I wish that the choruses were double tracked. If I were producing it, I would usually double track the chorus vocals, right? At least. I may play around with it, pitch shift it down or something lah. Okay? Yeah, but we'll see. Alright, there we go. Alright, so I'm gonna call it a night, right? Thank you again so much for watching. Right, stay safe everyone. Okay, peace, love, music. Ouch. See you again in another video real soon. And good night folks. Bye bye.